this is Kwunho Jeong. I'm the CEO of JMP Medi. JMP Medi stands for Journey to the Next Phase, so welcome to your journey to the next phase. We're an IT company, and we develop a SaaS product, software engineering, and we develop data platform for clinical trials. We have started this business to digitally transform conventional methodologies in clinical trials and bring operational excellence to all parties, including pharmaceuticals, hospitals, and CROs. JMP Medi is operated under the mission of client value first, integrated at all times, and socially responsible to provide unrivaled level of software provisioning in clinical research area. Today, I'll walk through three agenda: the evolution of clinical trial, and what does DCT means for clinical trials, and case studies of DCT. And let me begin with some histories. Clinical trials is in place since the 1700s. With hundreds of years of effort, we have reached closely to what is called gold standard of regulated and randomized and controlled clinical trials. It was the combined efforts from pharmaceuticals, academia, and regulatory authorities. There were key milestones of using placebos, drug safety guidelines, and blindness of clinical trials. Especially since the first RTC took place in 1946, we've all observed a great deal of randomized clinical trials conducted by many scientists and companies. Now it has been around 80 years since our first RCT was on, and unfortunately, the gold standard is having a hard time securing its position. As you can see, the graph on the bottom, conventional methodologies of clinical trial are no longer hitting the bullseye. We're expecting a lower and lower expected sales, more precisely a third, where R&D cost has almost doubled in 80 years. There are two reasons on this. Number one, know-hows are not being accumulated. Conducting two identical studies in a row doesn't really help. It doesn't really cut its budget on the second study. Number two, R&D costs are heavily depending on labors. We have to enroll many patients to make study move forward, but at the same time, we have to engage with a lot of people such as PIs, pharmacists, clinical research associates, and data managers. Actually, sponsors are becoming unhappy with the circumstances. New requirements arise from every stakeholder in the market, and luckily, most of them can be resolved by using technologies. Actually, it was a tragedy that we had to go through such a difficult disease, COVID-19, but at the same time, and luckily, FDA was being nimble to respond to challenges. FDA had actively supported COVID-19 vaccine developers, and the results were great. I'm pretty sure that most of you in this room are vaccinated for COVID-19, and also pretty sure that you have your shot from Moderna or Pfizer. They're distinguished and remarkable companies who are fully capable of developing the vaccines, but at the same time, they're very lucky that they were prepared to work with FDA during the pandemic. Moderna and Pfizer could have made their COVID-19 vaccines in about 11 months, including FDA approval, and this is such a short period of time compared to normal randomized clinical trials that you've seen on the previous page. This was a actually great catalyst to the market, giving a good enough confidence in the software capability and credibility and the market's openness towards technologies. During COVID-19 pandemic, FDA has specified how to conduct clinical trials in their new guidance. We were very surprised at their speed and the level of support in finance and system. Here comes the beginning of new era of clinical trials with decentralized manner of operation. FDA has recommended the use of technologies to enable televisits, remote IP provisioning, e-consent, and e-COA. FDA's activities have influenced other countries much too. Let's go a bit deeper what activities were taken to actually digitally transform the clinical trials. First is CTTI, the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative in the US. This organization has suggested and actually influenced many regulatory and research capabilities such as FDA, EMA, and NIH. In their suggestions in clinical trials, CTTI pointed out 5 initiatives by 2030. Patient centricity and accessibility, integration with healthcare processes, quality approach when designing the protocol, leverage every possible data, and last but not least, we should improve the population health. European Union also has been very keen to tackle clinical trial challenges. There are 2 mainstreams in EMA DCT movements. One is AHC EU, the Accelerating Clinical Trials in the EU, and the other one is Trials at Home Consortium. Soon after FDA has released its guideline on DCT in this May, EU also has released DCT point of view in ICH harmonized guideline. These are coming rapidly to daily clinical trials and actually impacting processes now. So we know the challenges that we have faced during COVID-19 and admitted that DCT actually had helped to solve many of those challenges. So DCT, what does it actually do? So DCT introduces actually a paradigm shift in clinical trial methodology. Digital technologies in clinical trial have turned many things possible. Those technologies are benefiting to both pharmaceuticals and patients. We call this form of digital transformation in many ways. Pharmaceuticals and hospitals would call it a patient-centered clinical trials, and market players like us call it decentralized clinical trials. FDA released its decentralized clinical trial guideline this May, as I mentioned, and now all parties are moving fast towards digitally transformed studies. Let me go over how DCT is actually benefiting players. Thanks to IQVIA for the data, DCT unlocks the scale of clinical trial at lowered cost and duration. Especially with DCT, we can deal with a doubled number of subjects at only 3/4 of resources compared to the conventional studies. This yields a solid increase in return on investment, which will make stakeholders satisfied. It's really hard to find any reasons why we're lagging the embracement of technologies toward DCT. Numbers are actually backing up. DCT is not only improving ROI, but it enhances and widens the collection of clinical data. Now, regulatory authorities can review with better totality of data for NDAs. These trends actually are aligned with US government's 21st Century Cure Act, where it recommends oncology clinical trials should collect patient quality of life data in a form of such as patient-reported outcome. Implications from data is getting more sophisticated, and they can be used to support clinical trial outcomes more easily. This will be possible when data becomes continuous and near real time and coming from a variety of sources, such as connected devices, meaning that we should use more technologies to conduct clinical trials. Software, especially cloud-related technologies, have enabled many of new methodologies in clinical trials. Pharmas and CROs are now developing their protocols and CRFs with using AI-powered electronic tools. Investigators can conduct patient screening and have their consent signed remotely before even they come to the clinic physically. And during the study, IP delivery, remote clinical outcome assessment, and televisit take place to minimize the operational cost while monitoring or even enhancing the quality of the study. Now, clinical trials are more visible, more data-driven, and more efficient in financially and time-wise. And most importantly, patients are happier. In patients' perspective, they no longer have to travel 5 to 10 times to the clinic where it's 100 kilometers away from their home. Throughout three years of our operation in DCT in this market, we have identified a great room for improvement with the support of software engineering. These are top 4 areas where we can disrupt most directly and efficiently. The idea is simple. We need to cut the time for patient recruitment so that we can start a study quicker. We have to maintain their participation to prevent any potential or unexpected study halt or suspension. The overall study duration needs to be optimized to tell if the pharma needs to accept fast fail or invest more. And the last, we need to be cautious on dollar bills going out from our pocket. This will be more complicated than we think because when we start a study, we have to deal with many different vendors from different backgrounds. 20 years ago, system was Seoul system. So one system is capable of doing everything. But these days, with an era of cloud computing, we have to deal with many systems combined to deliver a function. Then, how is DCT taking place in global and Korean local market? First, DCT. Probably as many of you already know, Pfizer has opened the door in 2011. It was the first IND approved form of randomized clinical trial with DCT elements. I had a speech two weeks ago at KIC, and I gave presentation with Medable and IQVIA. And all of the speakers have compromised that DCT cannot substitute a conventional clinical trial. We say digital elements will be used upon the circumstances of the clinical trial. So, Pfizer, 2011, they used a lot of DCT elements. It is 12 years ago, but they have utilized quite a few of technologies. DCRI's trial is also interesting as they had 0 visit with such a high participation rate. But it is true that COVID-19 has expedited the embracement of DCT since we only have a few DCT cases from a decade since 2011, but now we have thousands of clinical trials using DCT elements now. Most recently in 2020, Moderna has successfully proved the benefit of DCT with the help of FDA. So regulatory authority matters. Korean local regulatory environment is also actively preparing for the future of DCTs. Keeping up with the FDA's guidelines deployed in this May, both public and private sector are moving forward at their own pace and effort. Especially ARICT is launched in Korea with combined effort from regulatory authorities, investigators, and domain players. We will cover this in the later slides. We're expecting local tailored DCT guidelines coming out to the market soon. This will ultimately enhance our country's capability of clinical trials, especially to as many multinational studies as possible. Luckily, JMP Medi was honored to have a chance to lead the first DCT study in Korea. We have utilized software capability to support DTX company to remotely conduct recruitment of patients, screening of patients, getting consent from patients, equal of outcomes. With utilizing new technologies, they have succeeded on their confirmatory study. We have complied with not only GAM5, 21 CFR Part 11, GCP, and GCDMP, but in DCT manner, we had to cover Privacy Data Protection Act as there were components of patient enrollment and consent. We could calculate the quantitative benefit of DCT that we have conducted because the sponsor has conducted 2 identical studies with us in a row, one with conventional way and the other one with DCT. The comparison showed 50% of reduced time in patient recruitment, 66% of reduced number of visits, and 40% of reduced patient dropout. These outcomes yielded actual benefits to the sponsor in operationally and financially. During the efforts to implement these new DCT methodologies in Korea, several barriers have been identified. Let's take a look at the survey showing potential barriers when implementing DCT in Korean market. Areas related to remote operation is hardly be implemented to be either because of absence of regulations or site-related issues. Decentralization related elements such as direct-to-patient, local lab operation, remote monitoring, those look doable, but only 10 to 15% are confident with that. As Korea is strong in IT capability, using digital collection tools in clinical trials looks just fine. As shown previously, Korea is getting ready for DCT, but still has a long way to go. We have various reasons for that. For example, we still need to have licensed pharmacists in place to handle patient to take IP. Another example is that we have an issue related to tele and remote monitoring of patients. We need to research and go further with regulations. Although Korea indeed has a strong IT capabilities, data is not in holistic view with good manner of interface and integration. Multiple databases need to be managed as the clinical trial gets more and more complex with digital goods and elements. System management cost goes up. Also, this will lead to lack in collection of data for grasping totality of application when reviews in place. As I mentioned in the previous page, management cost grows reverse correlated to the amount of data processed during a clinical trial. This is why more IT capabilities should join in this market. Most of conventional elements of clinical trials, such as lab tests, IP supply, consent, are being digitally transformed. It's ongoing processes. We are no longer sending facsimiles to each other. Machines should be interfaced automatically with other machines. Until that moment, professionals need to be more heavily engaged with clinical oversight. Similar to FDA or EU, Korea is also moving forward with good pace under a few initiatives. The first is ARICT, as I mentioned before, the Advanced Regulatory Innovation for Clinical Trials Transformation. It is founded under the combined effort from industry, academia, regulatory authorities. Especially, ARICT is gathering voices from most of clinical-related associations, such as KRPIA, KSCD, KCROA, and actually the Connect. They have 3 years of plan in transforming a clinical trial environment in Korea. First year is to identify paradigm shift and become constructive via acquiring market requirements. Second year is to become digitized, responding to regulatory changes in digital healthcare. Third year is to become innovative, combining innovations and evolvement in every manner. Following the roadmap, we're expecting recommendations on DCT and the release of guidelines soon. The second is decent, as ARICT is more focused on how to digitally transform the methodologies of clinical trials in higher level. Decent is approaching more practical way. DCT elements are actively developed, reviewed, and validated with the help of the initiatives. Decent is working closely with ARICT, and academia, the Seoul National University Hospital, is leading the edge. So, in real world, full DCT may not be the key to every lock. We have identified 4 different pillars of DCT benefits and which type of study fit to where. For instance, utilizing eCOA to gather more data from patients, directly from patients, will benefit studies such as chronic disease and oncology. Rare disease studies will benefit for sure from using electronic patient recruitment tools. We would recommend sponsors to acknowledge potential benefits of using DCT methodologies and choose which modules to apply to their study. It is true that finding a partner who understands both clinical science and software engineering very well is essential to actually conduct DCT studies in real life. Since there is still a room for improvement implementing DCT in Korea, we would like to strongly recommend start thinking now. Find the right partner and engage them in earlier stage than normally do in conventional studies. Then DCT will move forward. This ends my presentation. Thank you very much, and I'll take questions.